Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into New Jersey law and some information for college. My guest today is Barnett Hoffman. He's the retired New Jersey Superior Court judge, and he also wrote a book called Sex Crimes in New Jersey, Understanding the Process and the Law. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. So usually I start my guests where they went to college. So where'd you go to school?
I went to Rutgers University.
Ah, fantastic. So how did you go about picking Rutgers University? Is it just that they wanted you and you just went straight there?
Well, it was not a difficult choice. I grew up in New Brunswick, and my dad went to Rutgers, graduated in 21, and everybody I knew was going to Rutgers, and you were asked the question, where are you going to college? The answer is, I'm going to go to Rutgers. It's right here in town, and you can drive there. So,
And that's what happened.
and that's what happens.
Great.
That's a good school.
Good. So you graduated Rutgers. How did you go from there to becoming the Superior Court judge of the state of New Jersey at the time?
I went to Rutgers Law School in Newark, graduated in 1965. After that, I went into the United States Army for 2 years, from 1966 to 1968. And then when I came back, I was in the private practice of law, and I was, I think, the last of the part-time assistant prosecutors in New Jersey. And eventually, I became first assistant county prosecutor in 1978, and Governor Byrne appointed me to the bench in 1981.
Wow, fantastic. And then retired when?
I retired in 2002.
Oh,
I didn't have to. I wasn't a mandatory age requirement.
okay.
I just wanted to do something else.
Oh, fantastic. So that gets us into, well, let's start out with the book first, being that the book is here. Sex Crimes in New Jersey. What is it about? How does it work?
Well, when I was on the bench, I was primarily in the criminal division. And for the last 6 or 7 years, I was a presiding criminal judge in Middlesex County. I don't know how it happened, but I was assigned to do all of the sex crimes. I'm not sure why I got that opportunity, but the idea was that it's a very unique area of the law, and that one person should do it all, because there's so many nuances in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was assigned to do it, and I tried many. Someone kept track. My menu was to do death penalty cases, other homicide cases, and sex crimes.
Wow.
So I did 11 death penalty cases, more than anybody else in the state. I did, I don't know how many other murder cases. And someone told me I tried, actual trial, of about 85 or so sex crimes and numerous other pleas.
Wow.
So it's a very complicated area, and it's unique. They're different. It's a different motion practice. The law is very different, and I thought it would be a good idea to write a book, which is primarily aimed at lawyers, assistant prosecutors, defense counsel, but also is for psychologists, for educators, and things like that, people like that.
So what's the detail of the book? What does it go into?
It goes into everything. It goes, the way the book is written, and I wrote it with Allison, my co-author, who was very smart. We needed somebody with a lot of experience and somebody who's very smart. She was very smart. So we wrote the book, and it's in various different areas. I go over some substantive law, a lot of procedure, and also there's various things, such as there's a lot of special evidence rules with regard to sex crimes. There's a special rule for children of sex crimes, evidence rules. There's also rules with regard to investigations. There's also rules, all sorts of rules. So that's what I go into. But one of the things, the two things that really are interesting to know about is that of what the concept of consent. The concept of consent is a very difficult concept because, for instance, when I would try a trial involving sex by force, of course, when they defined it, when they wrote it in the statute, they said a sexual assault is penetration with force. However, they never got around to defining force. Would have been nice, but so the Supreme Court had to define it. And most people who sit on a jury think of force as physical force, or you bat somebody in the head or smack them. And it's not. It's basically a lack of affirmative permission, which is a huge difference and which poses all sorts of problems with people in high school, especially people in college, and in my opinion, especially athletes in college. So it's a very difficult. The other thing that is very interesting is what's called the Rape Shield Law, which talks about in a trial, can you get into before the jury a woman, usually a woman's past sexual history, or how she was dressed? Very controversial stuff.
Sure. So when you were on the bench, you were telling me before the show you started a drug program?
I did.
What is that about?
Well, like all the other judges in the criminal part, everybody took their fair share of drug cases. I mean, there's just numerous. So when I took when I would have these sentencings, under the law, a person who's being sentenced has a right to address the person that they're sentencing, that's doing the sentencing. It's called the right of allocution, not electrocution, allocution. So the right of allocution, where they have a right to ask for leniency. To a person, they almost all asked for a program. They want to be in a rehab program. Well, this group of people that I was dealing with, if you don't have money, you don't have insurance, and none of them did, there's very little out there back in 2001 for drug rehab. So I got the idea, I think I'll start my own drug program, which was a bold move. And I didn't tell anybody in the justice system because it would have wound up being committed to death. So I just started it. I went to the warden at the county jail in North Brunswick, and he gave us a housing unit called the Pod. Went to the freeholders, and they gave us some money. But most importantly, I contacted a fellow by the name of Ed Mann, who actually knows how to run a drug program. He's kind of the guru of Middlesex County of drug rehab. Been doing it for years. Wonderful, wonderful person. So I teamed up with him, and we started the program. And I realized I don't have any money. So I had a stroke of luck. I contacted some people I know, and we got a substantial seed money from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation.
Great.
And it's been going on like that. And so on October the 1st, 2001, we started the program with 7 men. I called them my 7 astronauts. None of them knew what that was, but I did. So we started the program, and it's been up and running since that date. And it's up and running today.
Great.
So it'll be 16 years. We have well over 800 graduates. Our recidivism rate is pretty good. I mean, you know, the general recidivism rate is like 2/3.
Sure.
Ours is about 15 points better, which is good.
Fantastic.
And it's funny, people ask me, because I, over the years, probably sentenced about 3,000 people. People say, aren't you afraid? And the answer is I'm not. Those who are murderers and stuff, they're in there for a long time. But the guys who've gone through, the name of the program is ASAP, Adult Substance Abuse Program, ASAP. And the website is friendsofasap.org. So I see these people on the street, and they are so happy to see me, and they're so grateful. Not all of them are doing well, but a significant number are doing well. And I mean, I run into people that I've sentenced all the time. Some serious.
And to this day, do you get donations from people?
Yeah.
You do?
Well, we run a golf outing
Okay.
to get money.
Good.
Battleground Country Club, October 2nd. It's really a fun event. And we also are doing a chalk art festival in Highland Park, where artists do things on the sidewalks and on the blacktop
Great.
on August 2nd, in
Great.
conjunction with the police night out, believe it or not.
Fantastic.
They go together.
Yeah, that's good. Now, you also saying that you do some mediation as well.
I do.
What do you do with that?
I am presently with the law firm of Lomuro, Munson, Comer, Brown, and Shotland. The firm is located in Freehold. So my job, I'm what they call of counsel. I'm still not quite sure what that is. There's a lot of counsels in this world. A lot of retired judges go into mediation.
Okay.
So I have gone into mediation, and I do a lot of employment litigation. Very interesting. Law against discrimination, whistleblower cases, kind of interesting. So I do that. That's
Great.
mainly what I do.
And then you also said you wanted to discuss some intricacies about Megan's Law.
Yes. Megan's Law was a law that was passed, I believe, in early 1990s. It has a lot of good things to it. Some things are the scope is a little broad, but it didn't happen too far from here, you know. So the legislature in New Jersey, and as far as I know, this is the fastest bill ever to go through the legislature, passed Megan's Law, which has a couple of components to it. Actually, the real name is called the Registration and Notification Act.
Okay.
So anybody who's convicted of certain sex crimes has to register with the local police in the town in which they live, and every time they move, and sometimes they have to re-register every year, sometimes every 3 months, depending upon what they were convicted of. So there's a provision in Megan's Law that says that most of the people who are registrants, and there are thousands of registrants, can be removed from the registry if they make an application to the court after 15 years has run from either their conviction or from the time they got out of jail.
Okay.
Okay? So it's very important because it's a very heavy weight to hang around your neck for so long.
Sure.
And some of the Megan's Law convictions are, you know, there are people who have committed sex crimes, violent sex crimes, who should be in jail for a long time. Very few stranger-to-stranger sexual assaults. But you also have a significant number of what we used to call statutory rape.
Mm-hmm.
A kid who's 19, a boy who's 19, and a girl who's 14.
Right.
Totally otherwise consensual. Well, that person's on Megan's Law. So anyway, what I do is if people come in to see me at my office in Freehold, what I will do is prepare a petition, notify the proper people, notify the parole officers, and the notification part is, and Megan's Law is notification and registration.
Right.
But there's also something else in there that's really the killer, and that's community supervision for life. But that can be removed after 15 years also.
Wow.
Community supervision you see, there's nothing in Megan's Law itself that says you can't do this, you can't do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. All you have to do under Megan's Law is register and report. So community supervision for life means you can't go here, you can't go there, you need permission to leave the state. It's very onerous. So that's really what you want removed. So I am in the business of trying to help people
Do that.
do that.
Okay. And then there was the last thing that you wanted to discuss was college presentation.
Yes.
What type of presentation for colleges do you want to discuss?
Well, about 2 years ago, I realize I'm in Princeton, but I'm a big Rutgers sports fan. I've been a Rutgers sports fan since my father took me to the 1947 Rutgers-Princeton game, where Rutgers beat Princeton for the second time since 1869.
I hope you weren't around in 1869.
No. No. You realize, of course, Rutgers beat Princeton in 1869, in the only game played, so that they had to be national champions that year. So a couple of years ago, Rutgers was going through some bad times, the football team especially, and they had a lot of guys arrested for pretty serious stuff. I think most of the defensive backfield was in jail. So I had got in touch with the coach and asked him if I could make a presentation. So about 2 years, maybe 2 or 3 years ago this fall, I made the presentation to the Rutgers football team about lots of things, how they could get jammed up. Sports people, probably football and basketball players, are very vulnerable because, one, they stick out. I mean, football players are big and basketball players are tall.
Sure.
So they kind of stick out on campus. And they're vulnerable because they're very popular and people want to be their friends and people want to help them. And women like to be very friendly with them.
Right.
And that's fine as long as it's on a consensual basis. So what is complicating the thing is alcohol and drugs, because you can't consent voluntarily and affirmatively if you don't have the capacity to consent. So I tried to explain to them the definition of consent that we talked about before.
Right.
That, you can't get a girl drunk and have sex with her and think you're going to walk. And they say, well, I had something to drink too. Doesn't work that way. It's really a one-way street, which it probably should be. Okay? And I explained to them, the lecture that I give is called the Perils, Sex on Campus, the Perils, Pleasures, and Penalties. Because if you're convicted of sexual assault, that's a second-degree crime, and you can be sent to jail for 10 years.
Wow.
That's a long time.
Sure.
And I tried to explain to them, as best I can, and I think I can, what's going on. And the thing about consent is that it can be exercised at any time. There used to be a song by Meatloaf. I don't know if you remember Meatloaf.
Sure.
Paradise by the Dashboard Light,
Yeah.
where he tracks the person going from first base, second
Sure.
base, third base, and then he's about ready to score.
Right.
And she says, stop right there
Right.
before you go any further. So the guys have to understand that just because you got to first base, second base, and third base doesn't mean you can get home plate. A woman has a right, I use a woman because that's 99% of the cases.
Right.
A woman has the right to say, stop right there, I don't want to go any further. And just because someone may have had sex with you at another time or had some type of sexual interaction at another time doesn't give you a carte blanche every time you go out with her. So it's really a perilous, mine-filled area. So.
Now, do you do this at different campuses or just at Rutgers?
Well, what I'm trying to promote is different campuses. But it's more than just advising the students, because you got to look at places like Baylor, Penn State, I think Stanford, Duke. Not only do the students get jammed up, but the administrators get jammed up.
Sure.
And it kind of dovetails into my experience in employment litigation, because you have to protect yourself.
True.
You have to protect yourself. And I'm talking about the administrators. Athletic directors, big part of their job is raising money. They don't have time for all this, but they got to train their staff to do this kind of thing. Because if they later get sued, at least they'll have in place that somebody who is a retired Superior Court judge came in and explained what they needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of it.
So do the administrators, they have to go basically almost out of their way to keep track of these kids?
Oh, yeah.
Because it could be at any moment, any time, and constantly reiterate that information to them. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, in college, they can't go out on a date with them.
Yeah.
In high school, you're kidding yourself if you don't think there's a lot of drinking and drugging going on in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't when I was in high school, but my kids, they did their fair share, and
Mm-hmm.
they were lucky.
Yeah.
And I was lucky. But parents ought to be tuned in to the fact that they've got to protect themselves
Mm-hmm.
and their children in this kind of situation. They ought to know what the law is. They ought to know the parameters of a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
They ought to know what to do and not to do.
Is there something out in the public that gives them that kind of law? I mean, it's very difficult to know the laws unless you're a lawyer.
True. That's why lawyers charge.
I understand that, but how does someone get to know that information other than someone coming to the school and explaining it to them? Is that the only way parents can really
I'm
do
sure
that?
there are articles to be read if you Google it, and it's in the statute. But the statute is written by the legislature, and it's confusing. It's very
Mhm.
confusing. I mean, that's what I try to demystify in this book.
Right. So is there any way that the parents can police their own kids by reiterating some of that information?
Well, I think they ought to first have a sit down and explain to them face to face the do's and don'ts of what they can do. I mean, my grandchildren are starting to become of that age, and
Right.
I worry.
Sure.
I worry. So they really have to sit down, but they have to know what to tell
Mm-hmm.
them. Raising children is, I forget who said it, is part love and part guerrilla warfare. And it's true.
Yeah.
So you have to know your child. That's the first thing. Yeah, and you can't let the child do things that you don't know about. I mean, today is far more different than when my kids were graduating.
Yeah.
You have the internet.
Do you find that single parents have more of an issue of this compared to two parents?
I don't know the answer to that.
You know, being that you have a child that only has a single parent, and that parent has to be the mother and the father.
Well, I don't know the answer, but my sense is it's all about communicating with your child.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's two parents or one parent, I don't know. I mean, two parents can play good cop, bad cop, but I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah.
I think one parent who knows their child, loves their child, and gives guidance and direction to their child is as good as two.
Yeah. And then at the college level, you advise that the administrators should be actively making sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they should know what's going on in the fraternity houses, the drinking. I mean, they can't be there.
Right.
But sometimes you got to smack them on top of their head in college and say, look, don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
Especially athletes who have a future in a sport.
Sure.
Or non-athletes, in non-revenue producing.
Right.
I mean, you see, the strangest thing, you see sex crimes in high school,
Mm-hmm.
in wrestling, in gymnastics.
Sure.
There's a huge gymnastics things going on in the U.S. Federation of Gymnastics.
Right. Right.
So it's all over. It's all over.
Well, we're coming to the end of our show, and usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents that are out there?
Well, I kind of mentioned it, but I think that you got to be communicating and tuned in.
Mm-hmm.
You got to. I mean, my kids were out there. My son is now 50, my daughter's 48, my other daughter's 43, and they're living their lives. But I mean,
Good.
you got to find. Sometimes you find out a little late, but you got to build a trust. I think that's the main thing.
Good.
You got to build a trust that your kids respect you, and lead by example.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show.
This went fast.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
problem.
Okay.
All right, so you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.